All right. What's going on, everybody? Blaise over here, Mia over there. We're coming to you from the Blue Chip Athletic Club podcast. And today we're going to chat about the scale. This is definitely a hot topic amongst people that we are working with, and definitely wanted to hit on it with everybody too. But real quick, a couple of things that we're running with. Our free week, is always rocking and rolling. If you guys want to get a free week, please hit up Mia or myself. We'll send you the link to do that. We're working on some really cool content with golfers around the area, as well as just trying to help people kind of open up in their game. So be on the lookout for a lot of those things starting to come and hit live. And we're also running some, our Stronger Together program is always running as well for youth athletes and parents to be able to work together throughout. So, and kickstart kind of a health and wellness journey and really start to make a huge difference when it comes to their nutrition and training together. So without further ado, Mia, what's happening? What's happening this week, dude? We'll talk about that a little bit before we talk about scales and weights and stuff.
What's happening this week in my life,
in general? What's been going down?
Nothing really. I'm right now training for an ultra marathon, so that's my big next adventure in October. I did a trail run this past weekend that I think absolutely killed me. I've barely done anything this entire week, just trying to give my body a chance to recover. So just kind of trying to enjoy giving myself some rest and just hanging out in San Diego. My sister just moved here, so super excited to have her local and be able to spend more time with her. So everything's good over here. What about you?
Dude, I want to hear a little bit before we get too far in the weeds about this ultra. Is it a 50K, 50 miler? Yeah, okay.
50K.
Well, it's far, dude.
Yeah, it's concerning the fact that I've never done a marathon, who needs that? Just surpass that distance and go right to the ultra. So I'm definitely one of those people where, like, if you ask me to do something, I'll say yes, and that's how I get suckered into these crazy things. So that's kind of what happened here. My friend was like, "Hey, I'm doing an ultra," and I was like, "Sure, I'll do it with you." But it's been fun. I think it's like really cool because all my runs so far in San Diego had been just like on the road, like running by the beach, which is beautiful. But now I've been able to like get out to the mountains and like I've learned that trail running is also a lot of walking, which is really nice. Like you walk the uphill, so you see a hill coming, you're like, great, break is on the way. And so it's just been really cool to kind of like see a whole different side of San Diego, and it's been really enjoyable just spending more time outside in a different environment than what I've been doing. So really excited about that. Hoping Ben's ankle heals up before that race, but TBD on that. So yeah, super excited. Should be a lot of fun.
Is he signed up for it too?
He's currently signed up. He just is having he like rolled it really bad when we were in Tahoe for that race. So it hasn't really healed. So he's kind of on the fence about, is it smart to do it or should I like just basically skip the race and then wait for the next event.
Yeah, damn. I didn't realize that you had signed up for that. It's going to be super cool to watch. And this is, I know I'm not an ultra runner, or somebody who has competed in long distance racing, but I did a ton of research after I went and watched the, what is it? The West Coast, the West Coast race that I just watched that ended in Auburn? I forget what it's called. Somebody's going to smite me for it. Essentially, you start in like Lake Tahoe and you run like a 100-miler, West Coast 100-miler or whatever. And it's a huge event, and they basically published like a little like narrative about the training for it. And you don't like do you do a ton of running, don't get me wrong, but it's not quite as much as I thought it was going to be building up to that event. It was like, you're doing 10, 15-mile days every once in a while, but most of the runs are like shorter. They're doing intervals. You're doing like hard days, easy runs. I thought the training was super interesting. You probably could speak to even more of it from your Ironman training days as well. It's probably similar to that, right? You didn't actually do a half Ironman before the real half Ironman.
No, it's been a lot of like, I'm only running 3 to 4 days a week, and then my weekday runs are shorter. And so it's like one recovery, one run, one moderate run, and then one speed run. So like working on just being faster. And then all of the long runs, we've actually switched to time based. So kind of the target time that we would love to finish in would be 5.5 to 6.5 hours. And so right now it's been like the other weekend I did a 3-hour run. Then the last weekend I did a 3.5 hour run. We're going to deload this weekend and then probably push for a 4 hour run. But just, it's more beneficial than anything just to kind of get your body used to like operating for that long is what I'm finding. So even though like, yeah, on those 3.5 hour long runs, we're hitting good distance. We're not getting close to that, 30-mile mark that we'll be hitting in the race. But it's just like training your body to eat while running, training your body to be able to sustain this effort for extended periods of time. And then just also just testing all your gear, making sure you have everything you need. Because I learned the hard way last weekend that I need more water, since I kind of bonked on the trail a little bit. So just making sure I have everything I need. But it's been really cool. It's definitely like something I never really thought I would do, but here I am, and I've just been really enjoying the process and seeing how far I can kind of push my body with that.
Well, you're committed now, dude. You're in it. I did see the picture of you guys running last weekend, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is nuts, absolutely
Yeah,
nuts.
it's cool.
Um,
I mean, you're like scaling mountains and eating. We ate, what do we eat? We ate like fruit snacks at the top and a lot of like sugar, so can't really complain about that.
yeah, that's right. Cool, dude. Yeah, for us, we don't have a ton going on. I'm actually flying to the East Coast for engineering officer training stuff for the Coast Guard. So that's going to be interesting to go over there and kind of do that kickoff event between it's going to be in DC and then North Carolina too. So we're going to
Nice.
kind of be between a few. That'll be super cool to kind of get into that, but it'll definitely throw my routine off a ton. I'm going to be gone for like 2.5 weeks. So that's going to be a
Yeah.
lot for me to kind of work with and adjust. And I think, I haven't done a trip that has been that long in a little while. So it'll be kind of cool for me to, practice what I preach a little bit and kind of prep. And we'll probably try and take people through some of the tips that we have for making sure that you're successful when you're on the road also. But
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Without further ado, let's talk scale. So me and I were sitting here today, actually, we're texting back and forth and pondering a topic to discuss today. And I had gotten a message from a current client, shout out to Serge, that has been in the past really frustrated with the scale, and seeing the scale weight change, fluctuate up and down, kind of be on this kind of curve. And I just wanted to chat definitely and hit on the scale, what it's good for, what it's not good for, and then reasons why I think that it is an effective tool, but can also be something that you can let have a little bit too much real estate in your head. So, Mia, tell me a little bit of your thoughts on the scale, and then I'll probably plug in at some point to kind of hit on some things that I kind of think too. And obviously, we're just opinions, and everyone's got them. So,
Yeah. I feel like with the scale, a lot of people get caught up, right? Like when you're on a weight loss journey, you want to see that scale number go down. But I think the biggest thing that kind of gets lost with the scale is that there are so many other things happening to your body that aren't reflected by that number, right? So let's say you're on a weight loss journey, you're coming into the gym every day, you're lifting weights, you're doing your cardio, you're eating right, and originally, yeah, maybe you start to see that number on the scale going down, but at the end of the day too, right? Like you are now lifting weights. So you're also now building muscle on your body, and that muscle is going to cause that scale number to go up. So even though you're losing body fat and your body's changing, that number on the scale isn't necessarily changing with your body because of all these other changes that are happening. So I think people kind of get caught up in the fact that like that number might not be changing, but in reality there's actual physical changes happening to your body. So I kind of tell people, sure, like take it with a grain of salt. If you want to weigh yourself, that's great. Use that kind of as like a piece of data, but there's so many other pieces of data that we can look at to really tell the full story about what's happening with your body and what changes we're seeing along the way.
yeah, and beyond that too, right? Like we, believe it or not, get asked the question of like, what weighs more, a pound of muscle or a pound of fat? And it's like, well, they both weigh a pound. So realistically, 1 pound equals 1 pound, and that's same as same. But what people kind of say is like 1 pound of muscle is more dense than 1 pound of fat, right? So realizing that the density is going to change and those things are going to change. And then also the effect of having more muscle on your body, right? That's something that I feel like is not really covered or discussed. But like if I'm somebody who is 200 pounds, which is about what I weigh now, and I've got, 150 pounds of muscle weight and then 50 pounds of whatever else, organs, fat tissues, whatever. I'm going to be able to have a higher metabolism because that muscle is using energy. It's basically allowing me to eat more, to burn more calories, to do all these kinds of things. Whereas if somebody has less muscle on their body, 100, 120 pounds of muscle weight instead, what you're doing is you're losing out on some of those benefits of having the muscle on your body, not to mention the stability, the structure that's going to be around your bones to help protect you in the event that you fall down, the fragility and all these other things too. So it's not just, hey, what does this scale say? That's going to give you all the same kind of information. It's like, hey, your body composition matters. It's, hey, your the skeletal muscle mass is going to matter a ton too. And then how does that also translate into the life you want to live, which I think is even more important, right? Like, let's say you're seeing that you're effective in what you're doing. Lamar Jackson is a great example. I saw him play football last night for the first time in a year. And Lamar Jackson last year came into his season a little heavier. He put on like 15 or 20 or so pounds of muscle weight. And he was way slower. Like his first step when he was scrambling out of the pocket was much slower. And this year he actually lost 12 pounds, 12 to 15 pounds, I think the announcer said. And when he did that, he was able to be quicker and more effective when he was scrambling out of the pocket on his run. So think about like what the weight means to you, how it's going to be applied. And I think those are some other metrics to really make sure that you're aware of too.
Yeah, and I think Blaise brings up a good point with like it's mostly about how you feel, right? Like at the end of the day, like sure, that number on the scale is one thing, the way that you look is one thing, but if you don't feel good, then there are steps that we should be taking to help make you feel better. Like maybe that's going to be doing more stretching and mobility or taking a rest day, even. Like if your body's getting beat up from all the work that you're doing, just listening to your body and the way that you're feeling. And we want you feeling good. We want you feeling productive and like just overall better than you did when you started this journey. So just really listening to that. That's just like a really good way just to kind of understand how your body's responding to a lot of the stress that we're placing on it.
Yeah. And another good point too that we can kind of chat about is like intervals of like weighing yourself, right? With the scale. Um, I've seen kind of all walks of life where there's like, hey, I know a guy who has written down his weight every single day for like multiple years. He's got like a journal. He's a psychopath that way. Has been doing it for a number of years, and that's like his routine and his ritual. And then some people that like me, that I like hardly ever hop on a scale and look at the scale weight because I am much more about, hey, how do I look, move, and feel? And that's going to be more important to me. But what I will say is there are some strategies for you if you are somebody who wants to utilize your scale effectively so that you're making sure that you're tracking your progress the right way. The first thing is think about your hydration level, right? Like if you can normalize the time that you take your weight, and a lot of times they say morning is best. You haven't eaten, you're a little bit dehydrated because of you weren't drinking water throughout the night, and you probably pooped. Pooping is another ideal thing to have done beforehand, correct? But if you're somebody who weighs yourself in the morning some days and then the evening other days, and then in the middle of the night when you wake up and go to the bathroom on other days, you're going to get like 3 different sets of data. And then, not to mention, if you're not splitting that between like a week or a couple weeks to actually see trends, it could be incredibly demotivating. So let's say like for my females out there, and I obviously don't understand this because I'm a male, but your menstruation cycle is another point in time where like you're bloated, you're having all these other things happen. You're holding on and retaining water much more so than when you're not on your cycle. So if you think about it from that perspective, it's like, no, of course you're gonna that scale number is gonna go up because you're retaining more water because your body's hormones are basically demanding that you do that. So if you decide to look at the scale that way and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm 3 pounds heavier, what am I going to do? But you're losing that body fat that you want to do, you're gaining the muscle mass, you're in a calorie deficit, and you're making progress towards your goal, then you should be super happy and pleased with what that's going. But if you're not aware of those other things happening, you can be super demotivated.
Yeah, and I think another thing to add about that too, like it's great to weigh yourself first thing in the morning, but I know personally, like I've had situations where maybe I go to weigh myself and maybe the night before I had a really carb heavy meal. So now my body's also now naturally holding on to more water, which is going to skew the results. So just another thing to kind of keep in mind, that what you did the day before is also going to impact what your scale is saying in the morning. So if it's a little bit higher and you know that maybe you ate a lot of carbs, just know that that's why your weight might be a little bit higher. It's not that because you gained a pound overnight because you ate, 3 slices of pizza. It's just that your body's holding on to a little bit more water. So don't get freaked out about that either.
Yeah, so if you're like if you're somebody who does want to use a scale, I think a really good way, effective way to do it is if you're going to do it every single day, do it every single day at the same time. And what I would honestly do is take a rolling average. I would be like, hey, throughout these 7 days, I weighed myself and maybe I was 200 on day 1, I was 202 on day 2, I was 205 on day 3, I was 185 or 195 on day 4, and you basically take all those numbers and then you divide them by 7. You figure out where you're at in 1 week, you figure out where you're at in the next week, and then you're able to really see, hey, this is going to be following like you'll get some normalized results because hey, I've had XYZ types of meals at night. I understand this is where I'm at. And then you can kind of watch that trend over time. And even better, if you can have a scale that, and they're actually not super expensive anymore, the body composition scales that have little electrodes in them, like that's what we have here. I think it was like $80, and you basically stand on it and it'll tell you, hey, this is your body fat percentage. This is your skeletal muscle mass. This is it'll even try and estimate your like basal metabolic rate, so you can kind of understand like how many calories you would burn at rest based on your weight and a lot of the other data it's going to get. So it's another super effective way to kind of help gauge that success without giving the scale too much power, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. We have one of those scales, and I think it's really nice because you get a little bit more data. Or I know some gyms even have them too. They have like an eVolt scan or an InBody scan, things like that. A really great way just to get another piece of data about what's kind of where that weight number is coming from. That it's not just okay, I weigh this much, but it's like I have this much muscle mass versus this much fat. Um, and so I think it's just really important not to get so caught up on, what that number is. Like it's the same thing as like your pant size. Like I had a client one time come to me and she said, I want to be a size 28 waist. And I was like, why 28 waist? And she's like, I don't know. I just think that that would be a good size for me. And I was like, but there's no meaning behind that 28 waist. Like, wouldn't you rather, feel good in whatever size that you wear? Like you feel comfortable in your clothes, you feel confident, you feel that you're moving better overall, you're feeling more healthy. Like that's what we should be focusing on instead of, this arbitrary number, because at the end of the day it's just a number. It doesn't define you in any capacity, so don't let it define you.
Yeah, and kind of carrying on to that, I threw up a story the other day on our Instagram about my BMI, and maybe I can like throw another photo of it up somehow in the next couple of days, or maybe when we post this, I'll throw it up. But I'm considered like overweight. I don't quite think it's over at the obese line, but overweight. So like orange or so light in the green, orange, red kind of spectrum. I think it said it was like a 27. My BMI is a 27 based on my height and weight, which is not in the healthy range. So if I sat there and I like looked at this metric that is, in my opinion, incredibly dated, and that it just takes your height and weight and basically assigns some sort of a value to that based on what you have, I would be walking around like incredibly depressed and sad about kind of where I am along the way in my health journey. So realize that like that height and weight number is not going to tell you the full story. It's not going to tell you how much weight you can move. It's not going to tell you how fast you can run or whether you can get on and off the floor with your kids when you're playing with them, or whether you can jump and play sports or do whatever you kind of want to do, or hike or run an ultra marathon. Like, could you imagine like going onto this thing and you see like a photo of Mia, and I'll tell you she's jacked up and like an awesome fit person, and it's like, oh, you're actually obese because of the muscle mass that she has on her body. Like, I could not say enough. Like that there's some dated things, some holdovers from old school kind of medicine and especially health that I definitely think that like moving the needle on is important.
Yeah, for sure. Like Blaise said, it's all just old school. that's all people really had to kind of base it off of. But now that we've become more advanced, we have different technologies. There's so many better ways that you can kind of measure progress than just BMI and the scale.
So what would you do, Mia? Like, let's say you're a new person in the health space, or you're just starting a journey, and you're like, hey, I bought a scale. I'm trying to make a change. I'm trying to make a difference. And they saw it either go down, or they're trying to understand how to, best set a line or delineation. Like, what would you give them for advice? Is like, hey, this is a good starting point, or this is how you should kind of use this metric.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of the big ones I would say would be progress pictures, kind of seeing, okay, this is what I looked like when I started. Here's what I looked like after a month. And whether or not you want to share those with your coach is entirely up to you. I think sharing them with your coach is valuable because they can kind of point out things that maybe you're going to be a little bit more critical about. Another one is how your clothes fit. Like, let's say you were wearing whatever clothes for however long, and all of a sudden now they're starting to feel baggy. You have to get new clothes. Like, that's such a good feeling right there, knowing that now your body is differently shaped than it was when you first started. Another one kind of that I think is a little bit overlooked is taking form videos. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about with like how you're moving and how you're feeling. I think it's really cool. I've done it personally where like maybe I'm learning a new movement and I'm not super competent in it. But I like take a video of me when I'm doing it at the beginning and then take a video after a few months and just seeing how much better I can do that movement. Maybe it's just more of a testament to like progressing within your training program. I would say how you're sleeping, measuring how you're sleeping, how you feel on a day-to-day basis. Those are kind of just like the key things that you can do just to really understand progress at like a very high level without relying totally on the scale.
Yeah, and I would add a couple more too, and I agree wholly with all those ones that Mia said. But your energy levels, I think, are another huge one that I think of. Like, hey, before maybe in your health journey, you were somebody who needed like 4 cups of coffee throughout the day, and there's no way you could get through the day without that. Well, now you're down to 3, and you feel like pretty good. You feel like you got more energy, or to 2, where you're just having your 1 in the morning, or whatever that kind of looks like for you. That's happening because your body is being more effective at creating that. You're being better about sleeping, you're being better about training, your nutrition is better. Those other metrics are starting to happen. And it kind of happens behind the scenes, and it happens pretty slow. So definitely being aware of it, I think, is really, really good. The other thing too that I would think about is like, have you taken that step and then felt like, hey, you're getting this mindset win of where you're going. So let's say you're going through a workout, and typically you're like, oh, I can't do that movement, or I can't do X, Y, or Z, or I can't make this happen. And then you take that one extra step to push yourself a little bit further, push yourself a little beyond what you thought you could do. And you get to what I like to call like that zone of growth, which is like 5% uncomfortable. If you can get 5% uncomfortable and like your training sessions and your nutrition and your sleep, pushing the needle, you're really going to start to see a lot of these things like over time just really, really take off and skyrocket. So I think those are a couple of different metrics too that you can start to think about and utilize. And really, if you can just bring that to everything that you do, you're going to end up continually progressing over time.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I just kind of started thinking about it. The scale is I feel like we're caught up in a generation where we want quick fixes. Like everything we want to happen overnight. We want to lose 10 pounds in a week. We want to, be able to set a PR week over week. But in reality, it takes time. And I think the scale is kind of one of those things that we can use for that quick gratification. Like, oh, look, since last night, I'm down 2 pounds. And it might just be because you have less water in your body or whatever it may be. It's us looking for that instant gratification. But if we really want to make long term sustainable progress, looking at some of these higher level metrics, like those progress pictures, measuring, your progress in the gym, measuring how you're sleeping, what Blaise is saying, your energy levels, that's really what's going to lead to those consistent long term changes. And it's going to become more habitual. We're going to start to feel better and it's not going to feel so hard at the end of the day. So just staying consistent and making sure that we're keeping track of how we're doing over time is huge in your wellness journey.
Yeah, dude, you bring it up like the instant gratification. And I think about like, I heard this really, really wise guy say it's a crockpot world and people want microwave results, like we're slow cookers, dude. And what's funny is that there's new things coming online. Ozempic is a great example, right? Ozempic is this magic drug that you can take and you can drop X amount of pounds and it's going to do all this stuff to you. I don't know, and I don't want to dive into a huge Ozempic kind of rabbit hole. And I don't know how much research you've done on it, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but Ozempic doesn't just have you losing mass when it comes to your fat and everything else. You also lose a ton of muscular mass as well. So if you're somebody who's willing to sacrifice, 40% of your muscular mass, and then you're doing all these other things and you're putting yourself in this position because you want that quick fix of the scale moving, well, you're then could potentially be somebody who's frail and falls down and breaks their leg when they're in their 60s because you decided that you needed this thing for the quick fix. First, now whether that's vanity or it's whether it's like, hey, I wanted to see this progress and I wasn't seeing it before. Everybody has their own journey. Thankfully, it's America, and you can decide to take it if you want to or not. But the one thing that's tried and true is putting your head down and really just doing the work. If you're able to do the work, find yourself a coach. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Mia. It doesn't have to be me. Find yourself somebody who you resonate with. Find yourself a community that you resonate with. And then just start to take that small step in the right direction. Because realistically, the quick fixes, they don't work. They don't work long term. And it's not something that you want to be reliant on when you're old and gray, because a lot of those drugs, especially now, like we don't know what the lasting effects are going to be of taking those.
Yeah.
So we bring these new things online, people have quick success, and then it becomes this, huge thing, and people would rather spend X amount of thousands of dollars on Ozempic than paying a couple $100 at a gym that they resonate with to be able to look, move, and feel their best over time and make that something they can sustain, build, and learn, and then do it autonomously on their own.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's funny because I actually had an interaction just like this at the gym the other day. Some lady came over to me, and she's been coming for a while, and she walked in, and she just had this like aura to her. She just looked great. She's just like, you could just tell she was happy, she was confident. I said something to her. I was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, like, you look really good right now. Like, I know you've been coming for a long time, working your butt off, but like, I just wanted to say something because I wanted you to hear it from me." She's like, "Really, man? Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like the scale isn't dropping. Like, I'm getting really frustrated about that." And I was like, "Yeah, but how do you feel?" And she's like, "I feel great. I love coming here every day. It's become part of my routine. I feel strong. I feel confident." And I was like, "That's all that matters. Like, at the end of the day, like, I don't care about your scale number as long as you're happy with the progress that you're seeing and the way that you feel. Like, that's perfect." And then she ended up coming in 2 days later, and she was like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know too. Like, I actually had like looked at a progress picture that I took from when I started this journey to where I am now, and I could just see so many physical differences." And I was like, that's exactly it. Like, even though that scale isn't changing, you just said it yourself. You're seeing these physical differences. You're feeling so much better. You're so much more confident. And she started tearing up, and I don't really like hugging people, but I was like, I need to give you a hug right now because this is just like the most wholesome moment. And this is why I love what I do. I love people that come in here and they have that mindset shift, and I love when they push themselves hard and they see these results. And at the end of the day, that's what gets me to show up every single day for you guys. And I hope that everyone listening to this or anyone who's looking for a coach finds like that kind of community and what they're looking for, because it's the most rewarding feeling.
Yeah. And I will say too, like, we had somebody that we work with as well that recently was like, "Hey, we haven't seen a ton of results and blah, blah, blah." We basically sent her a free portion guide, and she started to see results within like 2 weeks of understanding kind of a little bit more about the food that she was eating and how that could potentially affect her results. So to tack on to what Mia is talking about, if you're somebody who has questions about like eating or these other, like, we are here to help you. We're here to help kind of guide. We've got a ton of free resources that we can push out to you, that we've already made and created. So it's really no skin off our back to send them out your way. And we really just want to make sure that you guys are looking, moving, and feeling your best. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. The wholesome feeling of the mindset shift is honestly, if you said, "Hey, Blaise, you could have somebody who has a mindset shift like this client who popped in, or you have somebody who loses like 30 pounds and that was their goal in whatever the time frame is, you could say, call it 6 months." I would way rather have the mindset shift person personally, because I think that the mindset shift person will have the results happen. It'll just be on their timeline, and they weren't not going to be somebody who's like tied to like, hey, if they make it 6 months and they didn't lose the 30 pounds, they're a failure. They kind of start to live and walk that journey, I guess, on their own. Whereas the other person, could end up kind of falling back because their scale is not going to move 30 pounds in the subsequent 6 months doing the same exact work that they did the first, not necessarily. So just definitely something that I agree with you. I think that having that shift, I like to say, like, you could be given Michael Jordan's training program, but you're not Michael Jordan, so you can't be Michael Jordan. Like
Yeah.
that's the part that's more important. Michael Jordan's head was more important than his athletic ability, because that's what really, really pushed him and made him kind of the best that's ever lived.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool, dude. I don't really have a whole lot else today. I think that was super good. I appreciate you coming on and chatting. Do you have anything else you want to leave anybody with? Any last pieces of advice on scale things?
The last thing I'd say, just kind of to beat a dead horse, don't fixate on the scale. It's not the end of the world. Focus on how you feel. Take those pictures and just keep showing up for yourself, and that's when you're going to see those results over time.
Hell yeah. Show up, dude. If any of you guys like this, please share it with somebody. Drop us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it. And if, like I said, the biggest thing is making sure that you're looking, moving, feeling your best. Mia says it best. That's why we keep her around, to keep us honest. Thanks, Mia, for coming on. We'll be back next week for another one. We'll see you guys.
Peace.